if you do the work on yourself, if you do the spiritual work, you will get to a point where you can start to experience the field of consciousness as a direct personal thing. And this is best done in deep meditation. It doesn't really work that way. You can't just crash the gate because it can be very damaging. Your shadow self is what you have to move through to get to the fruits of the higher self. The shadow is what guards the gate. If you haven't done your shadow work, you're not going to be able to see this information yourself. So the Earth is moving into a state that is more advanced. The Law of One says it's 100 times more harmonious than living on the Earth right now. That's hard to imagine. But it's still only 4D. When you get up to 5D, that's when you really learn all the scientific stuff, the wisdom, which is honor. Actually, the honor principle is very important. Honor is the principle in which you are willing to sacrifice yourself for a greater cause, and in which you have a sense of duty, a sense of responsibility. Whereas a 4D person with a very open heart, you may have a very open heart, but you also may say, well, I just don't want to do that because it's not fun. I only want to do things that I enjoy. The principle of honor is a principle that says, I have a responsibility to do this. I might not like it, but it's my job, it's my responsibility, and I'm going to make sure that it gets done. So you have the two primal forces in the universe, love and light. Love is fourth density, light or wisdom is fifth density. The unity of love and light is sixth density, the brow chakra. That's the level that your higher self is at. That's the level that Ra is coming from. At that level, you have compassion and wisdom, compassionate wisdom, unity, oneness. And then after that, you have the seventh density, which is the level of what they call the guardians. These are the entities that actually advise groups like Ra. They watch over us when we go through this process where our planet shifts from one dimension to another, and make sure that nobody falls off to the wayside, that everybody gets where they need to go. So we're under enormous protection. The guardians, what they do basically is they reach a point where they say the looking backward is finished. And what that means is they've reviewed their whole soul's history, all the past lives they've ever had, and they gain all the knowledge there is to know. They become fully enlightened. At that point, they gain what's called spiritual mass. This is all Law of One philosophy now, which becomes like gravity, and you actually begin collapsing into oneness, which means by the time you're at a seventh density level, it's almost like you are a star. Like a whole star is your being now, or even a whole galaxy potentially is your being. And these entities eventually collide back into oneness. Galaxies eventually implode on themselves, and that's not just something that you're seeing out in space as a star or a galaxy collapsing. It's actually an entity that has finished its curriculum of evolution and is regaining its unity with the oneness. After the seventh density, you go into the mystery of what's called intelligent infinity, which is oneness, the true oneness, in which you have no memory, no identity, no sense of past, present, or future, simply allness and foreverness. And that freaks a lot of people out. They say, well, I don't want to ever lose my personality. I don't want to lose anything. It's not losing anything, it's gaining. It's gaining back who you really are, because you're not separate from this universe. You are the universe. That's the really important message of the Law of One is everybody suffers and goes through their drug addictions and their shopaholic, workaholic, rageaholic, driving too fast. All of these addictive behaviors, all these mind melds that we get into with negative energy are all a function of like feeling separated from God or from the Creator, as if we've been abandoned, left alone, isolated here. You reach a point in your cosmic evolution where God is not something out there that you're saying, oh, there it is. It's within. So how could you be a messiah on a planet? How could anybody be? Because that implies that it's somebody else, right? It's not somebody else, it's you. You are the Christ consciousness. And the second coming of Christ, as Casey described it, Edgar Casey, is something that's happening in a lot of people. So it would be inappropriate in the extreme for me to claim any type of uniqueness or special ability or rank that's higher than other people. So we are moving out of that hierarchical thing, and that is definitely part of what this fourth density consciousness is about. And that is that only beings in fourth and fifth density require UFOs to travel. When you get up to the sixth density level, you are now the equivalent of a whole planet worth of people like us that's fused into one mind. And that becomes such a powerful entity that it will just think itself anywhere in the universe it wants to go, and it's there. It does not require a ship to travel. UFOs are actually something that these ETs generally are creating with their own consciousness. They manifest it based on kind of like blueprints that they can download. The internet is a very apt metaphor of what shared consciousness is like. We are moving into, when we move into the fourth density on Earth, we will have superhero powers. By comparison to where we are now, you will be able to levitate yourself. You'll be able to instantly manifest objects with your thought. You'll be able to travel through time, travel through space. You'll be able to provide for instantaneous healing, and there is telepathic communication. So there are no secrets anymore. Everyone's consciousness is unified. You can't hide anything from other people. That's a very profound, discontinuous shift from where we are now.
That leads into where ETs are at this moment, because they do have at least telepathic abilities, most of them,
right,
that are far advanced of most Earthlings.
Absolutely, absolutely correct.
So that leaves us at a disadvantage, depending on what their agendas are. So maybe you could talk about that.
We are experiencing the Battle of Armageddon on this planet. It is not something that occurs in the future. The Law of One philosophy is just one philosophy, which is based on what we call ageless wisdom or esoteric wisdom. And I'm not trying to say that this material is the only material that's any good. However, it is a fact, to my understanding, that most channeling that you see out there on the internet now, or in books for that matter, most of it is highly distorted. And the reason why is that there is a Battle of Armageddon going on. It is not something that occurs right at the end of the age in the last few years before 2012. It's actually been occurring for thousands of years. And it's a battle between good ETs and bad ETs is one way to say it, even though good and bad is a very relative, subjective term. When we say good, we mean entities that are service to others oriented, meaning that their purpose is to help, to love, to create a unifying of people together in love. Entities on the service to self path believe that they are helping, believe that they are creating spiritual evolution, but they do it by interfering with you, by making you uncomfortable, making you unhappy, colliding with your free will. And they will try to invade a planet and conquer a planet. But they can't do that unless they have the desire of those planets' inhabitants to be conquered. That's a very important point. They have to have the free will mandate. The people have to say, yes, we want to be enslaved, we want to be taken over. That's why they can't just sweep into a planet and invade and take over. Now, the beings that are above fifth density, like in sixth density, you have the unifying of service to self and service to others. Negative and positive are the same. They come together. And some people get really freaked out when we say that. But it's true. There is a level at which the Creator uses the negative path and the positive path to promote evolution. One of the really great tenets of Law of One philosophy is what happened at the dawn of creation. There was only the positive path. Every being knew that it was one with God, knew that it was one with the Creator. There was no sense of separation. And as a result, nobody was growing, nobody was evolving. It was very stale, very boring. People were spending thousands and thousands and thousands of years in third density, which is where we are now, without ever graduating, because nobody needed to help each other, and that's the whole point. The changes on the Earth that we're seeing now, all the upheavals with the honeybee collapse, and then with the SARS virus, and with the Earth changes and the solar system changes, and the government conspiracies and corruption, and the fossil fuels dwindling, and the gas prices are going up, and the economy might collapse, and all these things that are happening are designed to sort of make us uncomfortable, so that we draw together and that we find a way to connect with each other and become more at peace as a society. And we start seeing how the path of separation and pulling each other apart doesn't work anymore, that we have to come together as a unified consciousness. So when you're dealing with evolution in the universe, it was very early in our creation that one of the galaxies represent the primordial creators. They basically set up a whole system of evolution of 22 archetypes, 22 basic experiences that every person on every planet will go through in that galaxy. And wherever you are, now there is a veil between the conscious mind and the superconscious mind, meaning that you can consciously believe that God has abandoned you, that you have no connection to the universe. That is the seed of the negative path. The seed of the negative path is separation. The pain of feeling that God doesn't exist or God has abandoned you leads to you feeling like no one else has any value. When you start awakening to these laws of the cosmos, the radiant mind energy that's all over the cosmos, you then feel that you have become a god where none existed. And therefore everyone else is like insects compared to where you are. And that in order to enlighten them, you have to enslave them. That's the basis of the negative path. There are entities who believe this way who are higher evolved than human, higher evolved than the people on the planet at this time. And they are trying to come to this planet, trying to take over. However, those seventh density beings I spoke of before, known as the Guardians, their job is to create this wall of protection around the Earth, which is called a quarantine. And that basically ensures that, that they will never be able to invade. Now, because we as a planet are not uniformly positive, we have a blending of positive and negative influence. That means the average person may, on the one hand, say, I love you to their spouse, and then go and cheat on them with somebody else, okay? A lot of people on this planet think of themselves as, they say, well, we're basically good people. We're all basically good at heart. In the Diary of Anne Frank, that famous line she says at the end, here she's been tortured by the Nazis, right? And she says, but I do believe that we're all really good at heart. Well, that's actually the problem, is that there are people who are doing very negative things who believe they're basically good at heart. And they're not dealing with the disconnect between the good part and the part that's hurting people. So you might have a guy who says, well, I love my wife and I support my family, but yet he's going out to strip bars or he's cheating on her with somebody else. When mass murderers and murderers in general have been interviewed when they're on death row, they don't say, I'm this terrible killer. They almost invariably will have justified the murder for whatever reason, even if it's people that they didn't know and they had no connection to. They will come up with some reason for why what they did was a good thing. So we as a planet are in a situation where we are doing negative things, but we're not aware that they're negative, and that's a major problem that we have. So as a result, we end up forcing ourselves to have these negative greetings, as they're called. We have these entities around us that could provide a perfect protection from negative entities interfering with our planet if we had the mandate as a society to be only positive. But we don't. We're creating negative energy in our own lives, like by lying to people. That's a great example. If you can look somebody in the eye and know that you're not telling them the truth, but you're doing it basically for your own benefit, then in some small way, you're sending some energy out there that will allow a negative greeting to happen in your own life, which means you might have bad karma. You might suddenly hit your head on the door and you're bleeding, and or it could also be something that happens to the whole planet. This is why we have corrupt government. This is why we have environmental degradation. This is why we have earth changes. The earth changes are actually very much like what the primitive society said. The earth is a living organism. If we were getting along harmoniously as a people, we would not be having earthquakes, we would not be having hurricanes, tornadoes, none of that stuff would be happening. It's a projection of our disharmony. And a great way that I saw that happen was during the Israel-Lebanon war last year. The tensions of everybody's mind got really, really tweaked out on the planet. And then there was a global heat wave. I mean, here in LA, it was horrible. You guys remember that? It was like I was lying there in bed because I didn't have air conditioning in my apartment in Santa Monica, and I was dying from the heat. And it was all over the place. It was Europe, it was Asia, it was North America, South America. Well, it was because everybody was freaked out that the Israel-Lebanon war could create World War III, Armageddon in the Middle East. There was this huge fear in the planet, and that stops the energy from flowing through the planet the way it should. It gets bottled up and creates this unusable heat, which causes us to have these earth changes. So these guardians, these seventh dimensional beings, again, create this bulletproof shield around the earth, but because we invite incursion by our negativity, there are certain random windows that will be opened, and that is mandated. Nobody knows when it will happen until it happens, but when they open, you get what's called a UFO wave or a saucer wave. Most of the UFOs that you see in the sky are negative entities. Most of the UFOs are negative. There are some that are positive, but the majority of them are the negative side. Doesn't mean they're going to hurt you necessarily. You will not be affected by these UFOs unless you have invited it in your own life by basically being overtly negative. So that's another good incentive to stay on the positive. It's all about, there's an absolute law in the universe, and it's free will. If you're on the negative path, you don't care about free will, but you're constantly having karma come back to you because you infringe on it. On the positive path, the definition of the positive path is that you're not infringing on free will. If somebody asks you for your help, you give them your help, but you don't offer service when it's not requested. That's another thing that's like fundamentalist groups, for example, whether it's Christian or any other religion, fundamentalist Muslim, fundamentalist Buddhist, fundamentalist Christian. If you're going out there and proselytizing people and saying, you're not thinking right, you're not believing the way you should, we have the answer, we need to tell you what's going on, guaranteed you're on the negative path. You cannot be on the positive path and be telling other people how to think or what to do with themselves, period. If somebody wants your help, that's great. So you put out a website, you put out videos like this. If somebody wants to watch it, they can. But if somebody's been watching this video for 4 hours or however long we've been going, and they're sitting here laughing at me and saying, David is a jerk and David is an egomaniac, well, I'm not asking you to watch the video. I'm not telling you this is how you should think. If fundamentalist Christianity works for you and that's your spiritual path, then go for it. Do it. If you're a Buddhist and you want to chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo all day long, that's great, fine. I'm not going to tell you how to believe or what to think because that's the negative path. The positive path honors free will. If you want to avoid negative greeting, you preserve the free will principle very diligently. You don't infringe on other people's free will. You attempt to promote harmony and love and a positive attitude as much as possible. And the more you can do that, it guarantees that you're not going to have problems. That's why most of the time, negative greetings don't happen to me, they happen to people around me. Because what they will do is they will find the weakness. They will find the chink in your armor. Somebody could have a relatively normal life if they're not trying to help the planet. They get involved with me, they become a business partner of mine, and all of a sudden they're having all kinds of disasters happen to them. Health problems, even to the point of almost killing them. And it's not like I'm giving them a voodoo hex or anything. It's because if they start infringing on what we're doing, or they start trying to steer me in a more negative or self-serving direction, they're accountable for that much more than they would have been before.
Well, it's also that they're also moving to a certain level. They're saying, okay, I'm up to this. I'm able to step up to another level, and therefore they're actually inviting the challenges.
That's right.
And they're higher challenges. So in a sense, it requires greater strength on their part.
Absolutely.
So it's actually on a certain level independent of you that the people around you they're stepping up is what they're doing, in their own way, as you are stepping up.
That's true.
And we see it all around ourselves that this kind of thing will happen.
Yeah.
So it's very important, though, also, just to backtrack a tiny bit, in which conflict has healing a bit, parts to it, so that to avoid conflict or to bury it is also not the answer.
Absolutely. That's a wonderful point. This gets into the concept of the protocol of avoiding negative greeting. When you're being negatively greeted, you have an entity that's coming to you saying, I want to enslave you. There's a way to handle that, okay? You basically want to love the attacker. That's the part that nobody can get their hands around. Like with the government, for example. If you're out there writing these articles saying the Bush administration is catastrophically ignorant and these buffoons are these jack-offs, if you're sending hate to them, you're guaranteeing that you're perpetuating the cycle of hate. Hate only leads to hate. So you see the negative entity as being a person like you, part of the oneness that's confused because it believes in separation, it believes in pain and control and manipulating people. So you send love to the entity because you recognize that there's a part of yourself that's like that. There's a part of yourself that's manipulative and controlling and dominant. But you also draw boundaries. Boundaries is the key. Boundaries is where you say, I love you, I love you, but there are conditions because I'm not going to let you do this. I'm not going to let you infringe on my space. If every spiritual conundrum you found yourself in had a very simple answer, enlightenment would be simple. All you'd have to do is have a book, right? Like my book, for example. This was the German version of it, actually. We didn't show that before. It's been published in 2 countries now. And you say, well, okay, in page 303, it says here that, okay, when somebody is telling me that I'm a jerk, all I have to do is say, screw off. Okay, screw off. And boom, your problem is solved. It's not that simple. The real way that enlightenment works is that there's always these gray areas where you have to use your wisdom and come up with something on your own.
Right, and this gets back to love and wisdom.
Right.
So we actually want to move up the chakras. We want to unite love and wisdom and move forward from there. Thank you very much for sharing with us, and
It's my
maybe we
pleasure.
can do some more of this because you seem
Happy
to have
to.
a lot of knowledge. But I want to ask you quickly, why do you have this woman next to you, this statue of a woman, which is very, very interesting choice, and maybe she has meaning for you, so I just thought it might be nice to know what it was.
Well, I chose to use the symbolism of Sophia, the divine feminine. The higher self is approached as a feminine source. It's the color of blue, so the color of the shirt that I'm wearing is intended to represent that. Now, ideally, she should have been on my right shoulder, but the room was not adequately situated in such a way that we could do that. But, the Illuminati would have this be Isis and would say it's the feminine principle of Lucifer. That's not why I'm doing it. First of all, it was just kind of a cool prop to have in the shot, something to look at. But more importantly, the feminine is the way in which divine energy comes across. We are moving out of a patriarchal society and we're moving into a feminine. So the feminine energy is that which is coming in at this time. And so this is kind of like a reminder to me, this is where energy is coming in from. The left-hand side, it goes out through the right. So energy is coming in from the feminine, and I just wanted to sort of hopefully bring in some warmth and some nurturance, because I can at times be really masculine in my energy and really left brain scientific. And hopefully this will remind me to, stay on the feminine side and keep my heart open.
Okay.
But it's been really wonderful to have this opportunity to speak with you. And again, my website is www.divinecosmos.com. And I thank you guys for participating in this. All that's required to be able to go through this ascension is slightly 50% more service to others than service to self. You can still have a lot of flaws. You don't have to be perfect. Everybody gets to win in this game. It's very simple. Just try to help others as much as you can, and that's it.